To our amazing viewers at Midnight Affairs Tales, welcome and thank you. Your presence makes these stories worth sharing. We'd love to hear which part of the world are you joining us from. Let us know now. Let's dive into today's story, Chapter 1. Everyone thought I was crazy. She cried. Her family defended her. The kid hugged me like nothing changed. Then I opened the envelope, and the room stopped breathing. Daniel stood at the head of the dinner table. 8 people watched him. Her parents, her sister and husband, 2 neighbors, Mara and Ethan. The envelope in his hand had been folded, unfolded, gripped, smoothed out, then folded again. His fingers were tight around it now. He hadn't planned to do it like this. But when Ethan had asked the question an hour ago, "Why did Uncle Mark say you're not really my dad?" something inside Daniel snapped. Not violently, sharply, like a metal wire pulled too tight. He looked at Mara. She was already crying. Too soon. Too ready. Guilt was a rehearsed performance. But this was the reveal. "I asked you one thing before I left for my last tour," Daniel said, calm but shaking. "I asked you to be loyal. Not perfect, just loyal." Mara's mouth opened, but no words came out. Her father spoke instead. "Danny, whatever this is, it doesn't need to be done in front of everyone." Daniel ripped open the envelope. It was a printed lab result, sealed with an embossed authentication. A private test, hair sample, processed through an independent DNA chain Daniel had used for military clearance years ago. He looked down at the text he already knew by heart. Probability of paternity, 0%, 10 years, Daniel said, holding the paper toward Mara. "I've raised a child that isn't mine. And you knew the whole time." Ethan looked confused, caught in the fog of adult war. His small voice tried to cut through it. "What does that mean, Dad?" Daniel couldn't answer. His hands dropped to his sides. Mara's mother reached for her daughter, whispering like the world was falling apart. "Mara, tell him. Please." "I didn't mean—" "Daniel, I didn't know at first," Mara finally said, mascara streaking. "I wasn't sure. I was scared." Daniel nodded slowly, blinking like he was recalibrating reality. "You knew the timing. You knew it wasn't me. You let me name him." No one spoke. The truth doesn't need to echo. It detonates in silence. 12 hours earlier, the garage door rattled shut behind Daniel. The house was quiet. Too quiet. He'd come back from base 3 days early. No announcement. Just instinct. He had driven straight through Virginia without stopping, powered by old suspicions that had never fully gone away. The slip-ups. The text message last year. The way Mara always jumped when her phone buzzed. And Mark, his old friend, had been distant for months. Almost evasive. He ran his hand along the kitchen counter. Everything was clean, untouched. He opened the trash bin and saw the takeout containers from last night. 2 sets of chopsticks, 2 miso soups. He hadn't been home. Ethan hadn't either. So who was the second person? He opened the junk drawer and pulled out the black USB drive he'd planted behind the spice rack 6 months ago. A military-grade keylogger and mic system designed for safe-house surveillance. It had auto-synced every time Mara's laptop connected to the home Wi-Fi. He plugged it into his personal laptop and waited. 9 folders popped up. Dates, recordings, screenshots, financial statements. Then a folder labeled Mark. He clicked it. There were emails, some deleted from her end, others preserved through the logger. Mara_ich, you said you'd tell him. I can't lie anymore. He's starting to ask questions. Mark C77. You made your choice when you stayed with him. You don't get to bail now. Then, a recording, audio only. Daniel hit play. Mara's voice, whispering. He's back next week. I don't want him to find out like this. He still thinks Ethan is his. God, what if he takes him away? Mark, let him try. He's not the father. And if he pushes it, we'll bury him in court. Daniel hit stop. There was no scream. No rage. Just an eerie stillness in his eyes, like someone entering a war room after an airstrike. He clicked on the next file, a PDF of a bank withdrawal. $20,000, pulled from the college fund Daniel had set up for Ethan when he was born. Signed electronically by Mara. transferred to an account in Mark's name. The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was financial, parental, legal. They were planning to erase him. Back to present day, the dinner table was cleared. Guests gone. Family stunned. Ethan upstairs, watching something loud enough to drown the fallout. Mara sat at the edge of the couch, shivering. Daniel stood at the window, looking out at nothing. She finally spoke. "I was lonely, Dan. You were gone for years. War changes people." He turned, voice colder than anything she'd heard in 12 years. "Don't you dare blame the uniform. I bled so that you could live in comfort. I gave you safety, stability, and you gave me a forged life." She looked up, mascara cracked like paint. "What are you going to do?" He walked past her, down the hall, grabbed the duffel bag from his closet, not for leaving, for preparation. "Nothing right now," he said. "But if I were you, I'd get a lawyer and call Mark. Tell him to sleep light." He paused at the door. "War does change people, but not how you think." Then he was gone. Not away, just moving in silence, like he used to, like a soldier stepping off the grid. The next morning, Mara woke up alone. The bed was cold. The curtains were open, letting in the kind of daylight that felt sharp and surgical. Downstairs, the house was silent. No pan clatter, no coffee brewing, no Daniel. She walked into the kitchen and found a sticky note on the fridge. "Took Ethan to school. He's still my son until a court says otherwise. Don't call me. I'll be in touch." Her breath caught. She clutched the counter, shaking. Upstairs, her phone buzzed. Across town, Daniel sat inside a 2008 black Honda Civic he'd bought and cashed 2 nights ago. Unregistered. No GPS clean plates. He watched Ethan walk into the school building, backpack bouncing, smiling at his teacher like nothing in the world was broken. That smile was why Daniel hadn't lost control yet. It was why the gun he once carried every day still sat locked in a box, untouched. Because the war he was in now wasn't about bodies. It was about truth. And truth needed evidence. He turned to the laptop on the passenger seat. The software loaded in silence, a full suite of digital surveillance tools he'd refined during years of counterintel. Geofencing, keyloggers, real-time social scraping, and most importantly, silent cloud sync. He'd already reactivated Mara's iCloud access using an old backup code. Her photos, texts, and calls were syncing in real time. Same with Mark. One slip, one message, that's all it would take. Until then, he had a second target, legal ground. Daniel opened his contact list and scrolled past names until he found it. LT Casey Barnes, RET, Jag Core. He tapped the call icon. Dan Rourke. A gravelly voice answered, almost surprised. "You dead?" "Not yet, but I might be by the time this is over." "I'm listening." By noon, Daniel sat across from Casey Barnes at a Waffle House 20 minutes outside town. Quiet, discreet, no cameras. Casey looked like he'd never stopped being a Marine. Same tight haircut, same no bullshit eyes. Daniel slid over a USB stick. DNA test, bank records, audio of her and Mark planning to keep me in the dark. "Can I sue?" "You can do more than sue," Casey muttered, plugging it into his laptop. "If that test holds up and you can prove she knowingly misled you about paternity, you've got a shot at voiding child support retroactively, plus damages." Daniel sipped his black coffee. "I don't want the money. I want the truth in the open." Casey looked up. "Then don't go to family court first. Go to criminal." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "You've got fraud, financial theft, maybe even conspiracy if you can show Mark's been controlling her from the start. You can build a timeline. I've got everything from her first message to him. She used our kid's college fund to pay for his condo." Casey leaned back. "You're not building a custody case, Dan. You're building a case for custody, criminal charges, and exposure. But slow. Do not show your hand yet." Daniel nodded. "Be the ghost. Gather. Observe. Let them dig their own graves." That night, Daniel parked 2 blocks from Mark's house. He'd already mapped the entire neighborhood from satellite view. He moved like he did in Kandahar. Dark hoodie, soft shoes, no reflectives. Mark's house was newer than Daniel remembered. 2 stories. Backyard camera. Security system, consumer grade, sloppy. From the tree line. Daniel used a directional mic attached to his phone. Mark was inside, talking on speakerphone. The voice was Mara's. He took Ethan this morning, Mark. I didn't know he was back early. He had the test. Mark cursed. Did he tell Ethan? No, not yet. But he will. I told you months ago to come clean or take control. Now he's going to make this public. I can't lose my son, Mark. Daniel clicked record and kept the device aimed. Mark, he's not your son either, Mara. Not legally. If he sues, he'll make you look like a liar. A thief. He'll take everything. Mara, then help me fix it. I need to talk to a lawyer. Mark, no. Talking is how this started. Just trust me. Daniel pressed save. It wasn't the kill shot. Not yet, but it was a bullet. And he was collecting them. 2 days later, Daniel waited outside Ethan's school again. He kept his distance, let the other parents gather and gossip. Mara hadn't reached out. She was probably scared. She should be. At 3:14 p.m., the last bell rang. Ethan ran out with his science project in one hand and a popsicle in the other. Daniel stepped out of the car and waved. Ethan's smile widened. Dad. They drove in silence for a few minutes. Ethan crunched on the popsicle. Daniel kept his eyes on the road. Hey, bud. Yeah. Did Uncle Mark ever say anything else weird to you? Ethan thought. Just that I should be nice to Mom and not worry if you leave again. He said he'd take care of us. Daniel gripped the wheel. He say that before or after I came home? Before. Like last month. Daniel nodded. That was enough. A child's memory wasn't court admissible, but it confirmed the timing. Mark had tried to condition Ethan for a life without his father. He wouldn't get that life. That night, Mara finally texted. Mara, I want to talk. Just us. No yelling. I deserve that much. Daniel waited 3 hours before replying. Daniel, tomorrow. 7 p.m. public place. Bring your conscience. The next day, they met at a coffee shop off the main street. Open air. Cameras. Witnesses. Safe ground. Mara looked tired. No makeup. No rings. Daniel sat across from her with a small, black recording pen in his shirt pocket. She opened with a whisper. I didn't mean for this to happen. He stayed silent. I was lonely. He was around. You were gone all the time. At first it was a mistake. Then it became convenient. Daniel stared at her like a stranger. And Ethan? He asked. She swallowed. I knew he wasn't yours. But you were better than him. You loved Ethan more than Mark ever could. I thought, maybe if I never said anything. You stole a decade from me. I gave you a son you adored. Daniel's hand curled into a fist, then relaxed. I'm not the villain you think I am, she whispered. Daniel leaned forward. No, you're worse. Villains don't hide in birthday photos and love letters. They don't steal a man's legacy and then cry when the truth shows up. Mara's eyes watered. What do you want from me? He stood. Nothing yet. She looked up, confused. You said to bring my conscience. Daniel nodded once. Next time, bring a lawyer. Then he left. Back at home, Daniel opened his laptop. He had audio, financials, time-stamped files, a witness list. And now, he had her confession, full, clear, and recorded. He opened a new folder. Operation, clean slate. He uploaded everything. The revenge wasn't complete. Not yet. But the war had officially begun. Daniel didn't sleep that night. He sat at the kitchen table, lit only by his laptop screen and a dim bulb overhead. The house was still. Ethan slept upstairs, wrapped in Spider-Man sheets, unaware his childhood was a loaded weapon in a war he didn't choose. Daniel's folders were growing. Fast. Audio files. Transaction receipts. Backdated emails. The more he dug, the more it became clear this wasn't just a betrayal. It was a system, a setup. They'd started phasing him out years ago. Quietly. Legally. Like pulling nails from a house you plan to knock down later. Mara had forged a doctor's note for Ethan's last name change. Mark had co-signed the updated school forms. There were digital traces of account merges, custody clause edits. even a private consultation with a custody attorney. Dated 18 months ago. They hadn't just prepared for him to leave. They prepared to remove him, and he still didn't know why. By 7 a.m., Daniel was showered, dressed in civilian black, and parked outside Mark Carradine's law office. Mark was a respected family lawyer, one of the best in the city. Divorce, custody battles, spousal support. Ironically, the same man who'd written up Daniel and Mara's original marriage was now rewriting Daniel out of his own family. But everyone has a flaw. Daniel found it 3 years ago, late at night, drunk on base, bored, curious. He'd Googled Mark's name. A buried thread popped up from an old legal forum. Carradine Law settles quiet misconduct claim. Associate implicated. One woman. A junior paralegal. Quiet settlement. NDA. Daniel filed it away. Now, it was time to reopen that file. The building was a glass tower with cheap chrome signage, newer than its reputation. Daniel walked through the lobby like he'd done 100 reconnaissance walks before. Not rushed. Not lingering. He took the elevator to the 5th floor and stepped into the main office. Receptionist. Early 20s, chewing gum. Distracted. Phone in hand. Perfect. Hi. I'm supposed to drop off a flash drive for Mr. Carradine. It's about the Anderson divorce case. He told me not to email anything. She blinked. Who are you with? Garrison Group. We handle digital deposition records. She nodded like it barely mattered. You can leave it with me. Daniel smiled. Actually, could I just pop it in his assistant's inbox myself? He said it's sensitive. She hesitated, then waved toward the hallway. End of the corridor. Second glass door on the right. In/out, please. He walked past 5 doors, each marked with names. At the third one, Laura Baxter, paralegal, he paused. Locked. Daniel reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a key fob-sized device. Standard RFID replicator. Military tech. He'd skimmed the receptionist's desk badge when she wasn't looking. 2 beeps. Green flash. Door unlocked. He stepped in and closed it quietly. The office was neat, but impersonal. He scanned the desk. Nothing. Then he moved to the filing drawer beneath the desk. Password-protected drive hooked into the office PC. He plugged in his own USB, a live cloning tool, and let it run. While it copied, he searched paper files. Nothing jumped out until he found a manila folder labeled Carradine, Conflict Memo, McKenna/K. He opened it. 2 names. 1. Kelsey McKenna, former paralegal. The other, Kevin Maddox, court mediator, state certified. The conflict memo noted inappropriate relationship during proceedings and flag mark for coercive behavior, case tampering, and unethical conduct. Settled out of court, Daniel took a photo of every page. He didn't know who Kelsey was yet, but he'd find her. And if Mark had a habit of coercing women connected to his cases, this wasn't personal revenge anymore. This was a pattern, the kind that could take a man down publicly. By noon, Daniel was back in his garage, scanning every document. He isolated a key phrase from one memo. Threat of career retaliation if NDA broken. That was leverage. Daniel opened a burner phone and typed in a name he'd memorized. Kelsey McKenna, Baltimore, Maryland. Her LinkedIn said she worked at a tech firm now, no mention of law. New life. Clean slate. That made sense. He used a friend's proxy server to send an anonymous message through a secure relay. Subject: Carradine, your name came up. You don't know me, but I need your help. You're not in danger, but someone else is. Mark Carradine is doing it again. This time it involves a child. I'm building a case, and I need your voice. If you want to see the file, reply yes. I'll send encrypted access. No games. Just truth. A father. He hit send. Now he waited. Later that evening, Daniel picked Ethan up from school again. This time, he brought him to a local arcade. Loud, neon lit, filled with birthday screams and greasy pizza smells. Not because Daniel was avoiding the silence at home, because the child still deserved joy. He watched Ethan play skee-ball and talked to the attendant to exchange tickets for a stuffed panda. When they left, Daniel strapped Ethan into the passenger seat and looked over. "Hey, buddy." Ethan looked up, eyes soft. "Do you know what trust means?" Ethan nodded, unsure. "It's when you believe someone will do the right thing, even if you're not watching." Ethan was quiet for a moment. "Do you still trust Mom?" Daniel didn't answer. Instead, he said, "I trust you. And that's all that matters right now." Ethan leaned over and hugged him. Small arms. Pure heart. The only real part left. That night, 1:04 a.m. Daniel's phone buzzed once. Unknown number. Text only. "Yes. I want to talk. I'm ready. Cam." He exhaled slowly. Not relief. Calculation. He replied with a meet time and a burner link to encrypted video chat. No voice. Just typed messages. The next morning, they connected. Kelsey's face appeared on screen, older than in her firm photo, but sharper. She looked tired, but not broken. She typed first. "He threatened to blacklist me. Said if I filed formal charges, I'd never work in law again." Daniel replied. "Did he have leverage on you?" Kelsey nodded. "He said he had pictures. From a holiday party. Nothing illegal, but enough to ruin my rep." Daniel's fingers flew across the keyboard. "Did you sign anything?" "NDA. But it only covers specific case references, not general misconduct." He uploaded the audio clip of Mark saying, "Let him try. He's not the father." Kelsey read it. Her lips pressed together. "He hasn't changed." Daniel leaned forward. "Will you testify if needed?" Kelsey hesitated, then typed, "Yes, but only if this doesn't end in whispers. If we expose him fully." Daniel nodded once. "It will. I'm not here to scare him. I'm here to destroy his mask." The call ended. A new ally secured. Daniel added a new folder to the drive. Witness 1. KM. The chessboard was shifting. This wasn't about getting even anymore. It was about building a case so airtight, so public, so undeniable, that Mark and Mara would lose everything they tried to steal. The reputation, the control, the narrative. Daniel stared at the evidence on screen. One more piece, and this wouldn't just be a custody fight. It would be a reckoning. The first time Daniel made Mara sweat, it wasn't with anger. It was with silence. It started 3 days after their coffee shop meeting. No texts, no calls, no lawyers, just silence. The kind that crawls under the skin and makes people imagine what might be coming. She sent 4 texts by noon on Monday. "Have you talked to anyone? I need to know what's happening. Daniel, please. You said we'd keep Ethan out of this." Daniel didn't answer any of them. Instead, he had breakfast with Ethan, helped him build a solar system model, and walked him to the bus like everything was fine. But behind the calm, the trap was setting. Mark's firm was starting to feel the heat. That same morning, Daniel sent a small, unbranded envelope to the Virginia State Bar Review Office. Inside was a flash drive containing the following: a transcript of Mark's recorded conversation with Mara, screenshots of the bank transfers from Ethan's college fund, conflict memo involving Kelsey McKenna, digital signatures tying Mark to 2 sets of custody documents for Ethan, filed without Daniel's consent, no name, no return address, just one sticky note. How many unethical decisions before its disbarment? It was only a spark, but sparks lit fires, and Daniel knew how to wait for smoke. Later that day, Daniel sat in a small co-working space he'd rented under an alias. From there, he sent a second package, this time to a local investigative podcast known for exposing legal corruption. Same flash drive, different angle. He marked it: "The family lawyer who helped destroy a family." No journalist could resist that headline. At 3:27 p.m., Mara showed up at Daniel's house. No warning, no knocking, just the frantic sound of her car, doors slamming and fists pounding the front door. He opened it just enough to look at her through the crack. Her face was flushed, desperate. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered, looking around as if someone might see her. "You need to be more specific," Daniel replied, cool as winter. "Doing what? You're freezing me out. I haven't slept in 2 days. Ethan keeps asking why you're being so nice." "I am being nice," he said. "That's the scary part." She tried to push in. He blocked her. "I know you," she said. "I know when you're planning something. Then I guess you should have known better before lying to me for 10 years. She swallowed hard, then switched tones. Pleading. We can fix this. We can co-parent. We can make this work without lawyers. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Funny. You didn't mind lawyers when you and Mark were drafting me out of my own son's life. Her lip trembled. You don't want to blow up Ethan's world. That's the difference between us, he said, stepping back and closing the door halfway. I never wanted to blow up anything. I just wanted my family. You lit the fuse. And then he closed the door, not slamming it, just firm, final. She stayed on the porch for a full minute, then walked back to her car, already unraveling. That night, Mark called her from a blocked number. You need to shut him down, he hissed. I tried, she snapped. He's not talking. He's not angry. He's cold. It's worse. Mark sighed. I think he knows more than we thought. He hasn't filed anything yet. But I can feel it, he's building something. Mark paused. Then, we need to get ahead of this. What does that mean? I mean we find a way to make him look unstable. Dangerous. Like a threat. Mara's stomach twisted. You're talking about painting him as a risk to Ethan? Mark was silent. Then, we don't win unless we control the story. She didn't answer. The call ended. Unbeknownst to both of them, the entire conversation had been recorded. Daniel's listening device had picked up every word from Mark's office line. He played the file back on loop. We don't win unless we control the story. That was the playbook. But they didn't know Daniel was already writing the ending. The next morning, Daniel visited someone he hadn't spoken to in months. Paul Jennings, a forensic accountant who used to work cybercrimes with the military's fraud task force. They met at a parking garage downtown, neutral ground. Paul looked older, more gray, less patience. You brought me out here for what? He grunted. I need you to trace some money for me. Private transfers. Quiet. No record. From who to where? Daniel handed him a thumb drive. You'll find a series of transfers from a family college fund to a real estate account linked to a lawyer. Mark Carradine. Find out who else touches that money. I need a complete map. Paul scrolled briefly through the files. Whistled. This is deep, Dan. I'm deeper. Paul shook his head. You planning to go public? Daniel looked at him dead on. I'm planning to burn the mask off 2 people and show the world what they really are. I need receipts. Paul pocketed the drive. You'll have them. Back at home, Daniel found a small drawing on the fridge. Crayon sketch. Ethan holding hands with Daniel. The words, my real dad, he stared at it for a long time. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclamation. Taking back his name, his place, his child. 2 days later, Mara got a letter in the mail. Certified. Unmistakable. Inside was a formal notice of intent to file for full custody, based on paternity fraud, financial misconduct, and active collusion with a third party to remove a legal guardian. Attached were 10 exhibits. All admissible. She dropped the papers on the floor. That same night, Mark's firm received an email from a journalist. Subject line, Carradine under fire. Whistleblower claims pattern of manipulation. They called an emergency meeting. Mark walked in, pale. His assistant whispered, your wife's brother called. Said there's a podcast airing tomorrow about your firm. Legal misconduct. Your name's all over it. Mark's hand twitched. Mara texted him 3 times that night. He served me. He has evidence. We're losing control. Mark didn't respond. He was already texting a different contact, his own attorney. Midnight. Daniel uploaded his final file to a secure drive. It contained the new witness statement from Kelsey, transcripts from the second recorded call, financial trail from Paul's initial report, 2 legal memos exposing prior behavior from Mark, 3 social media photos showing Mark with Ethan, each one dated when Daniel was deployed. He titled the folder, For Court and the World. Open when ready. He encrypted it, made 3 offline backups, and created a single public drop link, set to go live automatically in 12 days unless manually deactivated. Insurance. Because if either of them tried to flip the script, paint him as violent, unhinged, unstable, the truth would go nuclear. This was the turning point. They weren't just lying anymore. They were losing. And Daniel wasn't finished. He was just warming up. By the end of the week, Mark Carradine was a man under siege. The podcast dropped Thursday morning. 37 minutes of damning audio, insider testimony, and quiet venom wrapped in calm narration. They named names, quoted documents, mentioned the phrase pattern of psychological coercion more than once. The episode went viral. Law Twitter picked it up. A few local law students stitched it into a TikTok. The headline wrote itself. Family lawyer exposed for manipulating custody cases. Is this legal abuse? By noon, Carradine Law had shut off their phones. Daniel didn't listen to the episode more than once. He didn't need to. He was watching the fallout from a laptop in the back of a coffee shop, sipping cheap espresso while Mara's world caught fire. Every time Mark's name trended, Daniel saved a screenshot. Each one was ammo. Mara, meanwhile, was spiraling. She showed up again. No text this time. No front door knocking. Just a voice behind Daniel while he was loading groceries into his car. You've made your point. He turned slowly. She looked smaller. No makeup. Hoodie. Hair pulled back like someone trying not to be noticed in public. I haven't made anything yet, Daniel said. This is still just the opening act. Mark's being investigated. You think that helps you? Daniel leaned on the car, arms crossed. I think it helps the truth. And that's all I've ever wanted. From both of you. She looked around nervously. He's panicking, saying I need to cut ties. That you're recording us. Daniel smiled. Mark's finally right about something. Her face tightened. What do you want, Dan? You want me to lose Ethan? You want me in jail? I want what's mine. And I want the courts to see you for what you really are. She whispered now. You think you're the only one who's been lied to? He froze. What did you say? She looked away. I can't talk here. Then don't, Daniel said, pulling the trunk shut. Talk where it counts. On record. He got in the car, drove off, left her standing in the parking lot, lips trembling like a dam about to break. That night, Daniel opened a new file from Paul Jennings. Subject, you need to see this. Inside the folder was a full forensic breakdown of 3 accounts connected to Mara and Mark. The college fund, a side real estate LLC, and something new, an insurance trust account. Opened 9 years ago. Daniel's name was on the policy, but not as the holder. As the insured. The primary beneficiary? Mara C. Rourke. Amount? $750,000. Daniel stared at the screen. His fingers went cold. The policy had been filed the same year Ethan was born, back when Daniel was overseas, sending money home, trusting everything was as it should be. There was no military beneficiary setup, no next of kin default. This was private, hidden, signed digitally, forged. He zoomed in on the metadata. The login IP didn't match Mara's. It matched Mark's. That was the real reason. They weren't just trying to erase him. They were waiting for him to die. Daniel stood in the shower for 20 minutes, letting scalding water beat down on skin that couldn't wash off the betrayal. This wasn't just a love triangle. This was a crime with a long fuse. Had they hoped he'd die in combat? Had Mara cried on the phone while checking her payout status in another browser tab? He stepped out, dripping, silent, and opened his safe. Inside were 2 things. A .45 pistol he hadn't touched since coming home, his discharge papers. Honorable, clean, forgotten. He took the papers. Left the pistol. He wasn't going to lose his soul getting justice. But he was going to take everything else. Next morning, Daniel called Casey Barnes. I need a second track. Casey didn't ask why. He just listened. I want to go public. The whole thing. But I also want a legal trail that hits both of them where it hurts. Then we split the charges, Casey said. Mara on financial fraud, paternity concealment, and insurance deception. Mark on professional misconduct, conspiracy, and document forgery. Daniel nodded. Let's file both, back to back. You sure you're ready for that heat? I served in the sandbox while they signed contracts behind my back. I've been through worse. Casey smiled through the phone. All right, soldier. Let's do some legal warfare. The next 72 hours moved fast. Daniel filed the suit. Confidentially. Strategically. Mara got served at work. HR watched her cry in the break room. Mark got served at home. His wife saw the papers first. She didn't speak to him for 3 days. And Ethan? Daniel protected him like a vault. No shouting. No chaos. Just dinner, laughter, homework, bedtime. The world could burn around them. But Ethan would never see the match. Then came the twist Daniel didn't see coming. A voicemail. From Mara. He played it 5 times to make sure he wasn't hallucinating. I'm ready to testify. Against him. Against Mark. I'll sign whatever you need. Just please, don't take Ethan away. He called her back. Calm. Controlled. Why now? Her voice shook. Because I know what he's capable of. Because it wasn't just you. He planned it. All of it. Told me if you died, we'd be rich and clean. That Ethan would never know. I went along with it. Because I thought it would never come to that. Daniel didn't speak. I'm not asking for forgiveness, she whispered. I'm asking for the truth to come out. Finally, that night, Daniel recorded a video statement. No script. No filter. Just a man sitting in a quiet room, camera steady, voice clear. My name is Daniel Rourke. I served this country for over a decade. I believed I was coming home to a son, a wife, a life I built with loyalty. What I returned to was something else. A conspiracy, a lie, a setup. But I didn't break. I built something instead. Evidence. Proof. Witnesses. This is not a story of heartbreak. It's a story of warfare, fought in courtrooms, inboxes, and whispered betrayals. And it ends with truth. He saved the file. Titled it, The Paper's Son, Statement of Truth. He didn't post it yet. But soon, the world would hear everything. Mark Carradine had one rule in life. Control the narrative before it controls you. But as the court papers stacked up, his name dragged through every legal forum online, and his wife left to stay with her sister. That rule turned into a curse. He paced his office, blinds drawn, suit wrinkled. The podcast had cost him 3 clients. The Bar Review had opened a formal ethics inquiry. And now Mara, the woman who was supposed to be the safe piece, was cooperating with Daniel. You're supposed to be on my side, he spat into the phone. I was never supposed to be on your team, Mara said, voice flat. I was supposed to survive. That's what you promised me. I promised you a future, he hissed. No, you promised me money, safety. And now the father of my child is coming for the truth. I'm not fighting that anymore. Mark's voice dropped into something darker. If I go down, Mara, so do you. But this time, she didn't flinch. I already went down. I just decided I'm not staying there. She hung up. Mark stood in his office, breathing like he was trying not to shatter. And for the first time in years, he felt the thing he had buried under a decade of confidence. Fear. Meanwhile, Daniel met with Casey Barnes in a neutral law office downtown. Mara had signed her statement. Full disclosure. Timeline. Motive. Financial details. Her confession included emails, dates, and specific times when Mark coached her to conceal Ethan's real parentage, and how to forge Daniel's digital signature on court forms while he was overseas. She's flipped, Casey said, handing the document back. And she's smart enough to do it now, before criminal filings drop. Daniel scanned the lines. Will the court see this as redemption or strategy? Casey shrugged. Both. But it works in your favor either way. Daniel nodded. Let's talk leverage. Casey smiled. My favorite word. By the next morning, Daniel had filed a formal request for temporary sole custody. Attached were the full statement from Mara, audio recordings between her and Mark, financial documents showing theft from Ethan's college fund, screenshots of Mark's insurance policy submission using Daniel's forged signature. The judge didn't rule immediately, but Daniel saw it in her eyes. Disgust. Sympathy. Clarity. The tide had shifted. And Mark? Mark got served with a protective order, barring him from contacting Daniel, Ethan, or Mara until trial. He screamed at the officer like a man on fire. That night, Daniel made his first public move. He uploaded the Statement of Truth video, not to his personal page, but anonymously, through a military father's support network with over 200,000 followers. It spread within hours. By morning, the video had 1.6 million views. Headlines started cropping up. Veteran betrayed by wife and lawyer friend speaks out. The paper's son. Viral video exposes paternity conspiracy, DNA, deceit, and his $750,000 insurance secret. Daniel didn't watch the metrics. He was too busy preparing the final strike. Mara called the next day. Not to beg, not to blame, to confess. I know you'll never forgive me, she said. Daniel was quiet. I don't expect you to. But Ethan, he needs to know that I told the truth. At least once. Before this ends. Daniel stood at the window, watching Ethan run through the yard chasing a soccer ball. He doesn't need a perfect mother, he said. Just an honest one. She cried. Quiet, tired tears. The kind that don't ask for pity. Just release. Then Daniel said something he hadn't planned. You'll have supervised visits. Court ordered. She gasped softly. You'd allow that? I'm not like you, he said. And I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for him. Then he hung up. Mark, meanwhile, was unraveling. The podcast team emailed again, requesting an on-record response to the allegations. He ignored it. His assistant quit. A former intern came forward anonymously, confirming pressuring tactics and verbal coercion during family law mediations. But the breaking point came when a video surfaced on TikTok, an old deposition clip, where Mark visibly cornered a woman in a hallway, stepping into her space, whispering something the mic didn't catch. The caption read, "He's been like this for years. No more silence." Comments exploded. The Bar Association announced an accelerated hearing. Daniel saw it on Twitter and smiled. Fast track to disbarment, he muttered. Casey texted, almost time. Then, the second twist landed. An anonymous message pinged Daniel's encrypted inbox. No name, just an attachment. You don't know everything. He opened it. A PDF. Court filing records. Dated 10 years ago. It was an application for emergency child guardianship, submitted while Daniel was deployed. Filed under temporary mental instability due to PTSD exposure. Attached was a physician's note. Forged. Daniel stared at the document. Mark and Mara had tried to legally strip his parental rights when Ethan was only a toddler, using false claims that Daniel was mentally unfit due to combat exposure. The request was denied. Judge flagged it for lack of credible proof. But the intent was clear. They weren't just waiting for him to die. They tried to erase him while he was still breathing. Daniel printed the document, pinned it above his desk, and next to it, he taped a note. This is the difference between pain and power. Final hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks out. Custody, fraud, professional misconduct, all rolled into one court date. Daniel didn't feel nervous. He felt ready. The kind of ready that comes after surviving war zones, betrayals, and a decade of lies. He suited up. Not for vengeance. For Ethan. For clarity. For the version of himself they tried to bury. The countdown had begun. And Mark Carradine's empire? It was already crumbling. The week before the court hearing, Daniel Rourke stopped being the man in the shadows. For months, he had moved like smoke, gathering evidence, setting traps, waiting in silence. But now he moved like fire. Because the silence had done its job. And now it was time to speak. It started with a letter. A personal one, hand-delivered to the office of the Virginia Department of Veterans Services. Inside, a brief summary of what happened to him, the forged mental health report, the attempt to remove his parental rights during deployment, the financial betrayal. He didn't ask for sympathy. He asked for support, for awareness, for change. 3 days later, they emailed back. We'd like to highlight your story as part of our upcoming Family Resilience campaign. With your permission, we'll issue a press brief. VA. Communications team. Daniel replied with a single word, approved. On a Thursday morning, Mara sat in a diner booth 2 towns away, nervously stirring black coffee. She was thinner, quieter, but her face had shifted, less guilt, more resignation. Across from her sat Trish Delgado, a regional journalist working on a family fraud series. I'm not doing this for revenge, Mara said carefully. I'm doing this because I finally see what I helped him build, and I need to help tear it down. Trish hit record. Let's start at the beginning. Mara opened her purse, pulled out a photo of Ethan, age 3, smiling in a Halloween costume. Then she said, "We thought Daniel would never come home." That same day, Mark Carradine met with his lawyer. She was new, expensive, cold. "You'll need to prepare for the bar committee hearing," she said, flipping through folders. "They've added financial deception to the misconduct list." Mark tried to laugh. "You don't get disbarred for bad emails and a pissed-off ex-client." "You do," she replied calmly, "when those emails involve financial manipulation of a child's college fund, forged documents, and multiple witnesses corroborating your influence in fraud." Mark leaned back, rubbed his temples. His lawyer placed one last folder on the desk. "What's this?" "Your wife's petition. She filed for separation this morning, with intent to divorce." Mark went pale. "Irreconcilable betrayal," she read aloud. "Professional shame. Exposure of character incompatible with family life." He didn't say a word. He just reached for a glass of whiskey at 10 in the morning. The room was silent, but the war was screaming now. Daniel, meanwhile, prepared his final move before the hearing. A full document dump, packaged, narrated, and edited with professional-level precision. He released it as a short documentary titled, "The Paper's Son, What They Tried to Hide." It ran 12 minutes. Included, screen recordings of Mara's confessions, Mark's voice coaching her to lie, legal evidence of the forged PTSD claim, audio from the insurance policy discovery, a closing voiceover from Daniel. "I was trained to fight threats in deserts and cities, but no one trained me for the enemy in my own home. Now I know silence protects the wrong people, so I stopped being silent." The video went viral. 3.2 million views in 48 hours. Comments flooded in. "He fought for the country and got stabbed at home. The calm in his voice is scarier than any revenge. She didn't just cheat, she conspired." Daniel never looked at the comments. He just prepared his final binder for court. 3 nights before trial, a black car rolled up to Daniel's house. Inside, Casey Barnes, briefcase in hand. "You ready?" he asked. Daniel opened the door wider. "I've been ready since the day Ethan asked if he was mine." They sat in the dining room. Casey laid out the courtroom structure. Custody first, then fraud, then the insurance piece. He slid over a photo. It was a still frame from Mark's 10-year-old deposition video, the one going viral now. "Timing is good," Casey said. "Carradine's legal credibility is falling apart." Even his intern dropped a statement saying he bullied her out of testifying in a custody case. "That matters." Daniel added the photo to the evidence tab. "And Mara, she's cooperating fully. On record. She'll testify second." Daniel nodded. Casey leaned back. "You understand what happens if you win this, right? I get my son. You get more than that. You become the man who pulled off the most controlled, precise revenge I've ever seen without lifting a finger in anger. No violence. No slander. Just truth." Daniel looked down at his hands. Scarred. Still. Then up at the wall, at Ethan's latest drawing. A stick figure family. This time, it was just 2 people, Daniel and Ethan, with the words, "My real hero." The morning of the trial, the courthouse buzzed. 3 camera vans were parked nearby. A few independent reporters stood outside, phones out, narrating live streams. Inside, the courtroom filled fast. Family court was rarely this full, but the story had gripped the public. Mara sat on one side, alone, silent. Mark sat across the aisle, flanked by his attorney, glaring holes into the floor. Daniel stood, confident, measured, not just a man, a message. The judge entered. Court is now in session. Opening statements began. Short, focused. Casey stood for Daniel. "Your Honor, we intend to prove today that this man, Sergeant Daniel Rourke, was the target of an intentional, decade-long deception. That he was removed from his son's life through fraud, forgery, and premeditated manipulation by two individuals who treated parenthood like a strategy. We are not here for pity. We are here for justice. Mark's attorney objected to the emotional framing. Overruled. Then came testimony. First, Mara. She walked slowly. Voice steady but hollow. She told everything. How it started. Why she stayed. How Mark coached her. How they planned for Daniel not to return. Her voice cracked only once, when she said, "He was the better father, even when I was the worst partner." Next came Paul, the forensic accountant. He walked the court through the money trail, the insurance account, the fraud. Then came Daniel. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't posture. He read from the same paper he'd written the night before. 2 pages. Just truth. When he finished, the courtroom was dead silent. Even Mark didn't look up. The judge took a recess. 20 minutes. Came back with eyes heavy. She didn't delay. Custody is awarded to Daniel Rourke, with full parental rights restored. Visitation rights for the biological mother are granted under court supervision. Additionally, due to overwhelming evidence of misconduct, the court will refer Mr. Carradine's behavior to the state bar and the district attorney for criminal review. She paused, then added, "To the defendant, Mr. Rourke. I've seen a lot of pain in this courtroom, but rarely have I seen pain handled with such restraint. Let this judgment restore what was taken and protect what matters most." Gavel drop. Case closed. Outside, Daniel walked down the courthouse steps holding Ethan's hand. A reporter stepped forward. "Mr. Rourke, any words?" Daniel looked into the camera, then said, "They tried to erase me, but you can't delete the truth, and you can't fake fatherhood." Then he walked away, not angry, not triumphant, just whole. 2 days after the verdict, Mark Carradine walked into his office for the last time. He found a yellow envelope taped to his door. Inside, a printed email from the Virginia State Bar. Subject: Disbarment recommendation finalized. Dear Mr. Carradine, following the recent court findings and confirmed pattern of professional misconduct, the review board has recommended immediate disbarment effective within 14 days. You will be given the opportunity to appeal, but you are hereby suspended from all legal practice in the state of Virginia pending formal review. Mark crumpled the paper and dropped it in the trash. The office was quiet. Half the desks were empty. His nameplate had already been peeled from the glass. Nobody looked him in the eye. He walked to his desk, sat down, and stared at the blinking voicemail light. 5 messages. He didn't play any of them. He just looked at the framed photo on his desk. Him and Mara, taken during a firm holiday party 9 years ago. She was laughing. He was holding her drink. They looked like winners. Now, they just looked like evidence. He opened the bottom drawer, pulled out a bottle of scotch, and poured it into a coffee mug. 10 seconds later, the building's security manager knocked on the door. "Mr. Carradine, you're no longer authorized to be here." Mark didn't fight. He just stood, left the drink, and walked out without a sound. That evening, Mara sat on the edge of her bed, staring at her phone. It was the first time in days that she hadn't received a new article, a comment, or a shared link about the trial. She was no longer trending. She was just forgotten. Her inbox was dead. Her friends, silent. Her job had offered a leave of absence that wasn't really optional. Her family had stopped picking sides and just started picking silence. She scrolled through Ethan's old photos, then stopped on one from last Halloween. Daniel holding Ethan on his shoulders, both of them laughing in front of their house. She'd taken the picture. She'd cropped herself out. She set the phone down, walked into the bathroom, and stared at her reflection. No makeup, no lies, just the face of someone who once held every card and burned them all. For what? Mara took a deep breath, reached for a pen, and began to write something on hotel stationery. Meanwhile, Daniel sat in his backyard, watching Ethan kick a soccer ball against the fence. The grass was a little overgrown. The mailbox still tilted from a storm weeks ago, but it felt like home again. He took a sip of coffee. His phone buzzed. A message from Casey. Carradine officially disbarred. No appeal filed. Game over. Daniel exhaled. Not a victory breath. A release. A letting go. Ethan ran over, grinning. "Dad, you see that shot?" "Perfect form," Daniel said, ruffling his hair. "You aiming for the World Cup now?" Ethan nodded, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Can Mom come to a game sometime?" Daniel didn't flinch. "She'll be there. Eventually. Supervised, remember?" Ethan looked down. "She said she's sorry." Daniel nodded. "She should be." Then he added, "But she still loves you." Ethan smiled, small but real. "That's enough," he said. Daniel hugged him tight. It felt good to hold something that wasn't broken. That night, a letter slid under Daniel's front door. No return address. Inside, a single sheet of paper. Typed, "You won in court. Congrats. But don't get comfortable. You hurt people who know how to stay quiet until they don't. We see everything." Daniel read it twice. Folded it. Burned it in the sink. This was a scare tactic. Maybe Mark. Maybe someone else from the firm who'd been exposed in the fallout. But it didn't change anything. He didn't scare easy. He didn't blink. Not anymore. The next morning, Daniel went to a meeting arranged by the Veterans Service Office. A local senator wanted to interview him privately about creating protections for deployed parents. Daniel wore his dress blues for the first time since discharge. Not for ego, for symbolism. The senator stood to shake his hand. "Sergeant Rourke, the internet knows you now, but I wanted to know the man behind the file." Daniel sat, straight-backed, steady. "I'm not here to be a headline," he said. "I'm here to fix a hole big enough to swallow families." "You did more than that," the senator replied. "You reminded people that dignity has a cost, and it's worth paying." They talked for 20 minutes. Before leaving, the senator placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. "Everything they tried to take, your name, your son, your sanity, you took it back with control. That matters." Daniel nodded once. "It wasn't about revenge," he said. "It was about the record." Back at home, Daniel found an envelope in the mailbox. Real handwriting this time. Inside, Mara's letter. "Daniel, there's no line I can write that erases what I did. But I need you to know something. I love the life we had, even when I ruined it. I know I don't get to ask for a second chance. But if you ever feel strong enough, I'd like to show Ethan I'm not just the woman who lied. I want to become the woman who changed. If you never speak to me again, I understand. But thank you for protecting him, even for me." Mara. Daniel placed the letter in a drawer. He didn't rip it. He didn't answer it. Some things needed time to settle. Like ashes. Like war dust. The next day, a local school counselor called Daniel. "Ethan mentioned your court case. He said something that got my attention." Daniel tightened slightly. "What did he say?" "He said, 'My dad protected me without ever yelling once.'" The counselor paused. "I've never heard a kid say that before." Daniel smiled softly. "I didn't need to yell." That night, Daniel tucked Ethan into bed. Ethan looked up. "Are the bad guys gone now?" Daniel paused, then said, "They don't win anymore." Ethan nodded, satisfied. Daniel sat on the edge of the bed for a while longer, hand resting on his son's back, rising and falling with each breath. A rhythm he'd almost lost. But never again. Daniel Rourke never expected peace to feel so unfinished. The house was quiet. Ethan was sleeping. The court battles were won. The threats were burned. The internet had moved on. And yet, there was still something lodged in his chest. Not bitterness. Not revenge. Unanswered math. Two people had conspired to erase him. But a third party had been involved. The insurance policy hadn't just been a secret. It had been filed under a firm Mark didn't work with at the time. Daniel had missed it during the chaos. But now, with calm eyes and a soldier's discipline, he saw the detail clear as day. One signature was notarized, dated, witnessed, and the witness line was signed, L. Dawson. He opened his files again, dug through every document, every archive, finally found it. A brief mention in one of Mark's emails to Mara. "Laura's good for this. She's done it before. She keeps her mouth shut." Daniel wrote the name down. Laura Dawson. Not a name he recognized. Not yet. But he would. The next morning, Daniel drove to the county records building. He requested a public notary file lookup under L. Dawson and found it. A license active from 2010 to 2022, now inactive. Last known address. One town over. He drove there the same day. Quiet street. Small, weathered house with overgrown hedges. The kind of place someone retreats to when they no longer want the world to knock. Daniel didn't knock. He waited. Watched. For 3 hours. Then the door opened. A woman stepped out, mid-50s, silver streaks in her hair, heavy boots, and a guarded look like someone who'd said no comment too many times in her life. She lit a cigarette and stared at the trees. Daniel stepped out of his car. Slowly. Calm. She clocked him before he spoke. "You a cop?" she asked. "No, lawyer." "Worse." She squinted. "Military." He nodded. "Thought so. You stand like someone who expects to get shot." Daniel walked closer. "I'm not here to scare you. I just want to ask about something you signed." "You mean something Mark made me sign?" she said. Daniel stopped. "You know why I'm here, then?" Laura took a long drag and exhaled like it hurt. "You're the soldier," she said. "The one with the kid. The one she said might not make it home." He didn't blink. "She said it was just insurance. That you were on base all the time. That it was to protect Ethan. And you believe that?" "No," Laura said. "But I believed in a paycheck. And fear." Daniel waited. "She said if I didn't notarize it, she'd say I'd been pocketing cash on the side from other signings." I was already on thin ice back then. Mark backed her up. Daniel's jaw flexed. "So you signed it anyway?" She nodded. "And then I burned my license and disappeared." He pulled a recorder from his coat. "Will you say that again?" Laura looked at it. Then at him. "You gonna use it to destroy them?" "I already did," Daniel said. "Now I just need to close the book." She nodded once. "Let it roll." The next day, Daniel sent the new recording to Casey Barnes, along with the old insurance files and notarized pages. Casey called within minutes. "You're not gonna believe this," he said. "This isn't just a civil issue anymore. You've got witness tampering, false certification, blackmail. This is federal." Daniel didn't react. "I'm not trying to reopen the case," he said. "I just want the system to know it happened." Casey understood. Sometimes justice isn't about prosecution. It's about documentation. 2 nights later, Daniel and Ethan were finishing dinner when a knock came at the front door. Not urgent, but not casual either. Daniel opened it to find Mara, standing under the porch light like a shadow from the past. She looked unsure, hands in her coat pockets. "I should have called," she said. "You shouldn't be here without clearing it with the visitation monitor." "I didn't come to see Ethan," she said. Daniel stepped out onto the porch, closed the door behind him. "Then say what you need to say." Mara glanced at the dark street. "Mark's gone. Moved out of state. No forwarding address. No appeals. Just vanished." Daniel waited. She continued. "Before he left, he sent me a file. Said I deserved to know how close it really came." She handed Daniel a flash drive. "I haven't opened it." "Couldn't." Daniel took it. "Why give it to me?" "Because you need closure more than I do." Daniel looked at her, searching for any trace of manipulation. But what he saw was something colder. She wasn't playing anymore. She was just tired. Mara turned to leave. Stopped halfway down the porch steps. "He told me once that if you died, the house would be paid off and we could raise Ethan in peace." I believed him. I hate that part of me, but it's there. Daniel didn't say a word. She nodded like she understood. Then she walked into the dark, not looking back. Daniel didn't open the file that night. He waited until Ethan was asleep. Then he plugged it in. The drive contained a folder labeled Contingency, DR. Inside were 7 documents. A second insurance policy draft, naming Mark as sole beneficiary, a custody petition for Ethan listing Mark as guardian of record, a psychological profile prepared by a third-party evaluator, never submitted, describing Daniel as unfit for long-term family reintegration, a series of text screenshots from a burner phone between Mark and an unknown contact discussing timing windows, deployment overlaps, and potential obstacles, a forged letter from Daniel, requesting a custody transfer, a single video file labeled for emergency use only, Daniel clicked play. It was a recorded deposition. Mark, staring into a camera, speaking calmly. If Sergeant Daniel Rourke is declared mentally unfit or fails to return from active duty, all rights should be transferred to the child's biological parent and his mother, under the co-parenting agreement signed in 2015. The camera timestamp read, May 2016. Daniel stared at the screen. They weren't just hoping he'd disappear. They were planning how to bury him on paper, even if he was still breathing. He closed the file, pulled the flash drive, and crushed it with a pair of pliers. That weekend, Daniel took Ethan camping. Just the two of them. No Wi-Fi, no noise, just trees, fire, sky. Ethan built the fire himself. Daniel watched him, proud and quiet. They ate marshmallows, then sat under the stars. Ethan leaned against him. Are we safe now? He asked. Daniel thought for a moment. Yeah, we are. Even from the people who tried to lie. Daniel put an arm around him. Especially from them. Ethan smiled. I like it out here. It's quiet. Daniel nodded. Quiet's good. Means the storm passed. The next morning, Daniel checked his phone. One last message from Casey, federal interest confirmed. They're opening a quiet file on Carradine for conspiracy and fraud. You don't need to testify unless you want to. But you should know, you changed something real here. Daniel closed the phone, watched Ethan skipping stones across the lake. Then he whispered something to himself. Not a prayer, not a threat, just a truth. You don't erase a man like me. And the lake stayed quiet. 6 months later, spring came back to Virginia. Soft light filtered through the windows of Daniel's kitchen, where eggs sizzled in a pan and orange juice filled 2 glasses. Ethan sat at the counter, still rubbing sleep from his eyes, legs swinging under the stool. You doing pancakes tomorrow too? He asked. Daniel flipped the eggs and smiled. Only if you score 2 goals in your game today. Ethan grinned. Deal. The boys' laughter filled the house, pure, unburdened. Daniel plated the breakfast and set it down. They ate in a rhythm only the two of them understood now. No tension, no avoidance, just a bond rebuilt, stronger than it had ever been. When Ethan was done, he grabbed his backpack, zipped it, and slung it over his shoulder. You staying for the game? Wouldn't miss it. Ethan nodded once and bolted out to the front door. Daniel followed, keys in hand. As they stepped outside, Daniel caught a glimpse of the mailbox. No letters this time. No subpoenas. No threats. Just a quiet street, washed in morning sun. And peace. For the first time in a long time, peace felt real. At the game, Daniel stood on the sidelines in jeans and a windbreaker, arms crossed as he watched Ethan dart across the grass. The kid was fast. Not the biggest, not the strongest, but focused. Intent. The way he tracked the ball, timed his pass, broke through defenders, it reminded Daniel of something. Discipline. At halftime, a familiar voice spoke behind him. Can I say hello to him? Daniel turned. Mara stood 10 feet back, holding a paper cup of coffee, her hands shaking just enough to notice. A court-approved chaperone hovered near the bleachers. Daniel looked at her for a beat, then gave a short nod. Wait till the game ends. She nodded. Of course. She didn't push, just stepped back quietly, respectful of her own boundaries for once. When the whistle blew and Ethan's team won, Daniel let him enjoy the victory. High fives, laughter. A sticky fruit snack passed down the line. Then he waved him over. Someone's here to see you. Ethan looked, saw her. He froze, just for a second, then walked over, slower than usual. Mara crouched to his level. Hey, baby. Hi, Ethan said softly. I saw that goal. That move you did where you faked left, then turned. Looked like you were flying. Ethan smiled. Barely. Dad taught me that. She nodded. He's good at teaching. They didn't hug, but they didn't walk away either. They stood there, the 3 of them, in a triangle of unspoken repair. Not perfect, not even close, but no longer broken. That night, Daniel sat on the back porch, beer in hand, watching the stars come out. Casey Barnes had called earlier to confirm the last file had been closed. No appeals. No additional suits. Mark Carradine was officially disbarred. Federal interest had never gone to trial, just a private settlement. His name scrubbed from 3 firms and blacklisted from 5 more. Rumor had it he moved to Arizona under an alias. Daniel didn't care. It wasn't about where the man ended up. It was about what he'd never do again. Daniel leaned back in the chair and breathed in the air, fresh-cut grass, warm night breeze. No noise. No war. Just a name. His name. Still his. Still standing. 2 weeks later, Daniel received a letter in the mail. It came from the Department of Defense. Inside, an invitation to speak at a private military parenting symposium in D.C. Topic: Family Restoration After Betrayal. Daniel almost tossed it. But then he read the second line. Your case helped us draft 3 new protections for deployed parents. Your file changed the system. He put the letter on the table and picked up the phone. On stage at the event, Daniel stood in uniform. Clean lines. Chest ribbons. Steady breath. The room was filled with military spouses, family attorneys, veterans, and active duty officers. He spoke simply. No theatrics. I wasn't prepared to be betrayed. I was trained for war, for loss, for sacrifice, but not for the kind of deception that comes with a forged document or a quiet lie whispered into a judge's ear while I was halfway across the world. He paused. But I learned that silence doesn't protect the innocent. It shields the guilty. People listened. Some nodded. Some cried. Daniel continued. I didn't win by yelling. I didn't fight with fists. I fought with facts. With discipline. With patience. And then he said the thing that stayed with everyone in that room. You can lie about a man. You can steal his time, his money, his peace. But you can't erase the man who never gave up on his child. That truth has a heartbeat. And it keeps walking. He stepped down from the stage to a standing ovation. And felt lighter. Months passed. Life settled into something solid. Ethan grew taller. His voice started to shift. He picked up the guitar. Started calling Daniel Sir when he joked, and Dad when it mattered. Mara moved to a neighboring county. Still under restrictions, but showing up, slowly, genuinely. Never asking for more than was granted. She'd stopped trying to explain the past. Instead, she worked on earning space in Ethan's future. Daniel respected that. Not because he forgave her, but because he saw what Ethan saw. A person trying, in quiet ways, to undo what couldn't be undone. Then came the school project. One Friday, Ethan brought home a paper titled, My Real Hero. Daniel found it on the kitchen counter while making dinner. He read the first line twice. My dad didn't wear a cape. He wore a uniform. He didn't save the world. He saved me. The rest of the paper was simple, honest, full of awkward 4th grade phrasing and messy handwriting. But one sentence stopped Daniel cold. Even when the whole world tried to lie, my dad stayed calm. He stayed close. And now I know why. Because truth always wins if someone strong holds on to it. Daniel folded the paper, put it in a box with his discharge papers, the court ruling, and the original DNA test. Then he locked the box and slid it into the back of the closet. Some battles didn't need to be displayed. They just needed to be won. 1 year later, Ethan asked to visit Arlington. I want to see where the real soldiers are. Daniel took him. They walked the rows. Flags waving gently. Silence held like sacred ground. At one headstone, Ethan stopped. He read the name, the rank, the short quote etched below. Then he turned. Did you know him? Daniel nodded. Yeah. He saved me once. Ethan looked confused. Thought you said no one ever saved you. Daniel smiled. There are all kinds of saving, buddy. They stood there a while. And as they walked back to the car, Ethan asked one last question. Will people remember you? Daniel thought for a moment, then said, only the ones who matter. 1 year, one child, one truth. Daniel Rourke had been erased on paper, but he walked out with his name intact, not just as a father, but as a man the world tried to silence, who answered with proof, and kept walking. Where are you watching from right now? What country? What city? Drop your location in the comments. I'd love to see how far this story traveled. And if this story moved you or made you feel anything real, hit the like button to let me know. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, someone who's fighting a silent battle of their own. And if you want more stories like this, powerful, raw, and real, hit subscribe and stick around. Thanks for watching. And remember, some truths fight their way through, but the real ones, they never need to shout. They just stay standing.